Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
Welcome to episode 51 of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, and this is the first episode of 2018, and I'm excited to be bringing you another year of amazing health content to get you right and get you empowered for the new year. And if you want my show notes, head over to drpiersblog.com/LLP051. Again, if you want today's show notes, head over to drpiersblog.com/LLP051. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about 2018, what's to come and what to expect here from the podcast. And I'm telling you, I'm excited. In fact, if you go, depending on when you're listening to this, if you head over to drpiersblog.com, it's been a total makeover. The website's completely updated, and I'm hoping to make it much easier for you guys to find what you're looking for. So sit back and listen to another amazing episode, and let's see what we have in store for you guys here in 2018. As we look ahead to 2018, I asked myself, what can the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry podcast improve upon? And what can we do to continue to enrich and empower the lives of all of our listeners? And I think, first and foremost, bringing on more expert guests, again, not to say that I'm not the expert in what I do, but I think bringing on more expert guests to talk about their fields and their personalities and how they do things is a much needed endeavor. And if you've listened to previous podcasts, you know I've actually enlisted the help of a podcast consultant, right? And again, as a physician, one thing you got to know is your limits, right? You got to know what you're amazing at, and you got to know what you're not amazing at. And I knew jumping into the podcast in 2017, I did it around June. It was something that we got pushed in. I had been doing the Lunch and Learn live Facebook live shows for so long. We got the feedback was so amazing, but we always kept getting that, hey, can you do an audio? Can I get an audio? Because a lot of times the people who wanted to listen and wanted to learn, they didn't have time to sit and watch the video the whole time. But if it was on audio, they could just play it on the road, play it on the way to work, play it from work, play it at home. So we ended up going in this direction and dropping a podcast. And as we look back at all the stuff that we did, which was absolutely amazing, I know the next step, especially for those who are looking for guidance and empowerment, is to start bringing on more specialized guests. So for 2018, I expect to hear much more people, I would like to say smarter than me, right? Depending on all of the topics that we've got going on, right? And again, we've got a wide range of topics, like I said. And when it comes to healthcare, there's usually not too many topics we can't touch on, right? And I'm fortunate enough to have a huge community of physicians and therapists and even politics, right? And because again, if you were talking about healthcare, especially if you turn on the TV, you got to understand that politics is a big part of healthcare. So we're going to be bringing a lot more guests, a lot more specialized guests for you, so you can kind of get their interpretation and their expertise on everything that we tend to know. I believe I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate as an internist that I kind of know a lot about a lot. But I'm not really specialized, right? Again, I know a lot about heart disease, but I'm not a cardiologist, right? I know a lot about gastrointestinal disease, but I'm not a gastroenterologist, right? I know enough that I can talk from my perspective, but I think you guys will really benefit from being able to hear it from somebody else. So that's definitely coming for 2018, as well as we plan on doing some live shows, right? So we're going to do some live shows because I think the fruition of a podcast is to kind of speak to the people, right? Again, I'm in my house as we speak. I'm recording. I'm in my house right now, comfortable. But I would love to be able to go to an auditorium, go to a classroom, go to somewhere, some public arena, and have people ask me those questions. Ask me questions that may come off the top of the head. Because again, you may be listening to this right now. You may listen to my podcast on blood pressure or diabetes or high cholesterol, and you may say, "Oh wow, I want to know about this, right? You may have a question like right then and there, and obviously because I'm not there, there's no really way to ask me for it. So expect a couple of live shows. We're hoping, again, we're going to start small. Again, we're not going to be opening up auditoriums or anything. But we're going to be opening up small just to give people the opportunity to have that experience, to learn and, get some empowerment when it comes to their health. Because I speak at a lot of places. I speak at a lot of nonprofit. I speak at a lot of churches and organizations, and it's always surprising how much gratitude they give, right? Because they understand that in the real world, most of your physicians, they don't really have the time to talk and explain and, kind of get them from point A to point Z. And they love listening to this podcast because it allows them to kind of follow along the train of mind. I remember growing up as a kid who wanted to be a physician. I thought physicians were magical, right? Because I couldn't understand how someone could, if I could tell them a few symptoms, and all of a sudden they know exactly what I got going on, and they know exactly what type of medication. And I thought, and they would do this in like 5 to 10 minutes, right? It wasn't something that they had to listen to me for a whole hour to get on it. It was very quick. So it was something that is amazing. But again, if you're on the other side, if you're the patient, and maybe you want to know a little bit more about your diabetes, maybe you want to know a little bit more about your lupus, maybe you want to know a little bit more about your rheumatoid arthritis. But unfortunately, in this day and age, the doctor doesn't have the time. They don't have the time. They got 40 other patients they got to see throughout the rest of the day. So they can only really give you that 10 to 15 minutes. And I think that's what's made this podcast so popular, is that people are, they can get there for, their 20, 30-minute fix. Again, I try not to go long, especially if I'm doing a solo. I try not to go that long because, how much do you really want to know about your high blood pressure, right? I think for a lot of people, they just want to know enough to be able to ask some questions, but they don't really need to know it in depth. And I really stress that. I stress to my patients, like, yeah, you may want to know about your osteoarthritis, but you don't really want to know the breakdown of why. You just want to have a fundamental idea moving forward. Like, okay, I have osteoarthritis, and this is how I have to deal with it. And, again, that's why they love coming to the podcast, because they can listen to it, they can get that feedback, and if it's something that, maybe they need some more questions on, they know they can go to the website, they can drop a comment, drop a question, and it usually gets answered pretty quickly. So definitely plan on, continuing what we're doing here with the podcast. And like I said, when I talked about bringing on more expert guests, like who is much more of an expert on diabetes than a person who actually has diabetes, right? Like, who's more of an expert on dealing with breast cancer than a person who's actually suffering from breast cancer? And that's the direction we're heading for as well, right? We're going to see some patients come on the podcast and give their perspective on the disease they're dealing with. Because I think as a physician, and I'm pretty sure I can tell you I'm guilty. I'm guilty as a physician, understanding a lot about the disease and just kind of, going textbook with it, right? Talking in the textbook terms, but not really encompassing the fact that I'm not talking to a diabetic patient, right? I'm talking to a patient who happens to have diabetes. So we're going to get some guests in here. It may not be too many, right? Because obviously, the guests got to want to talk about their disease. But we're going to get some guests on here that's really going to help enrich our mindset when it talks about, so when you hear a person has high cholesterol, when you hear a person has diabetes, when you hear a person suffer from breast cancer, right? You're going to hear from like their mouth what it means to them, right? Like what it means when they were first told they have breast cancer, right? What does it mean when they were first told they have diabetes? What does it mean when they were first told they have high blood pressure? And how do they deal on a day-to-day basis, understanding that that's the diagnosis they have? So I think that's going to be an amazing feature that we're going to have here with the podcast. So what you're probably noticing, there's going to be an underlying theme of hearing me do solo episodes. Right, less, right? So you're going to hear a lot less solo episodes. Again, not that I can't talk so much, but I want to give you guys that variety so, you don't get bored with just hearing my voice over and over and over again every week. So definitely expect to hear much more guests on the podcast. Definitely expect to hear guests on expert physicians, but also you're going to hear some patients as well, right? We're going to get across the board patients who have dealt with what they're experiencing, right? We're going to hear across the board from expert physicians and therapists and all of the professions under the sun on how are they dealing from it from a health perspective, and then from a business and professional perspective as well. And I think that's probably what I'm most excited about, because I see where we're going, right? Like I see where we're headed in regards to getting people to want to talk about their health. Because I think it's one of the joys that I love about this podcast, and then just everything we do on drpierre'sblog.com, is when people, and I'm talking about friends and family members who are my age, in their lower 30s, the late 20s, who are starting to ask these questions like, hey, should I be getting checked for this? Like, how often should I go to the doctor? Because I've talked about this in the past. Most of this age range, that 20 to 40 range, probably let's say 20 to 35, right? They feel they're invincible, right? And for a lot of reasons, right? Because a lot of times, a lot of the diseases we talk about usually doesn't affect their age range, but a lot of times because they just don't go to the doctor, right? They feel so healthy that they just kind of go through the motions. And I've had friends who haven't seen a doctor in years, and when I say years, I'm like 5, 10 years, right? And it's mind blowing when you think about it, right? It's mind blowing when you think that you can go almost a decade of your life and not see anyone about your health. But I think that's a sequelae of our society and how much we stress health. Like I think now we're stressing prevention, and especially from a business standpoint, right? And we're definitely gonna get some business episodes popping off soon. But from a business standpoint, the healthcare industry understands that it costs a lot of money to deal with all of these diseases at the late stage, right? Like I've had patients who, when they come to see me, and it's been 10 years since they saw me, all of a sudden, they have high blood pressure, they have high cholesterol, they have all of this, and they're on a whole bunch of medications. And a lot of these things could have been staved off if they just saw someone like 10 years ago, right? So instead of them having to be on 3 blood pressure medications and a cholesterol medications and 2 diabetes medications, they could have just took 1 pill when they were 20 and saved us all of this. So our government is really starting to, I want to say, make a priority. They're starting to make a priority of trying to prevent diseases going on in the long run. And as a primary care physician, even I hate the term, right? I absolutely hate the term primary care physician. I'm an internist, I'm a family physician, I'm a pediatrician. I'm not a primary care physician, right? But as a primary care physician, because our job is really to try to prevent you from having to go see all of these subspecialists, right? Our job is to really try to prevent you from having to go to the hospital, right? But our industry and the way we unfortunately get paid, it doesn't work that way. Like I tell people all the time, when I do this podcast, I speak for 20, 30 minutes. If I was in the office, I couldn't do it. Like I just could not afford to speak to every patient for 20 to 30 minutes because, I'd make no money, because our health industry business does not pay, right, for me talking, right? It pays for me doing, aka doing a procedure, biopsy, injection, something, surgery. Like it pays me for doing procedures, but it doesn't pay for me to do the talking, right? So that's why we do the talking here on the podcast, because I know you guys aren't getting the talking outside of here, right? So we're going to having some podcast business. We're going to have some health related business episodes as well, right? Because I want you guys to kind of understand the business of health, right? So you guys aren't like upset and mad at your doctor for getting you out the room in 15 minutes. They don't really have no choice, So we're gonna kind of hit health on all types of corners, right? We're gonna be talking to more experts this year. We're gonna be talking to patients this year. We're gonna be talking about the politics of healthcare this year. We're going to be talking about the business of healthcare this year, right? We're going to get it all kind of wrapped up under the sun. And again, I have to think, right? Like I have to think, because again, you always got to give your thanks, right? I have to think in the direction that we're going. I have to really thank all of the listeners and all of, even in my podcast consultant, right? I have to thank them for helping me go into the direction that we're going, right? And I think it's going to be exciting. So again, this is not a long podcast episode. I just wanted to kind of get it out there so you can look ahead for what we got in store for you. Like I said, I'm excited. In fact, Okay, and I want to give you a little preview. So at the end of this month, maybe beginning of January, just depending on scheduling, we're going to have episodes focused on sexual assault. And unless you've been living under a rock and you're living off of social media and you haven't turned on the TV or a radio, you understand how big of a topic this is right now. And we're going to have two amazing guests and specialists like in that field give their perspective on what all of this is about. Because again, as a physician, have I taken care of patients who suffer from sexual assault? Yes. I don't want to sit here and say that I'm such of an expert that I can do a whole episode on it. Again, this is the direction we're going, right? We're going to bring every time I have a topic that I really want to touch on, I'm going to bring the expert to talk on it. So stay tuned for that, and I'll definitely let you guys know more specifically when that happened, when that episode is coming out for you guys. Again, you guys have a great, blessed day. I want to thank everyone who's been listening since 2017 from the beginning. All of the new listeners, I appreciate you guys' support. Check us out on drpierresblog.com/LLP051.
Hey, Dr. Bear here. You have just listened to another great episode of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Bear. I hope you're excited and hope you learned something from today's episode. I hope you learned from all of the episodes that you get a chance to listen to. Before you leave, if you not have already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I am everywhere where you like to listen to podcasts at, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, wherever you like listening to podcasts, the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Bear is there. Also, go ahead and follow me on my social media outlets. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, as well as Twitter, all at Lunch Learn Pod, where you can, get any videos, any pictures I may post, any messages or writing. So please follow me on there right after you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, and right before you leave me a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or wherever you can actually leave me a review. I'm much appreciative of all of you guys' support. And like I said earlier in the show, I will see you next week.